just for those who weren't there. All right. So industrial is actually the largest amount of acreage in the study area. Interestingly enough, the city, as I understand, will be kicking off a comprehensive plan update, so probably be looking at some of these zones based on need. One of the purposes of this grant received from the state is to pick up on many of the values expressed in the Nelscott Community Plan. The Nelscott Business District now incorporates those values for a pedestrian-oriented, vibrant, market-oriented district. So we'll be looking to see what we can pick up from there into the east side pattern. Any questions about the city acreages, what's in the city now versus what's in the county? So about 150 acres overall. Let's see. So I think, Lawrence, this is a placeholder for you for the map that you're actually going to use. So I'm going to turn it over to you now. Sure. Do what you would like to do. Yeah.
Can you help us with that?
Yeah.
Now, should I hook up to the audio?
You were kind of use the.
If you can stand close enough to the table,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about
Okay.
Okay,
this.
so
If we minimize that.
Yeah.
Where was it left? It was left on the desktop?
Desktop.
Is this on the desktop?
Put this on you, so.
It's called,
Have a chance to open up their technical memo when you received it via email earlier in the week. Some of you did. Did anyone have any questions as we're fiddling with the technical operations here? We're cruising right through. I just covered pages 2 and 3 basically on the land use. And we're headed into the land use constraints now. One of the things that's most striking about the study area, of course, is its topography. So especially as we go east. So Lawrence is about to describe for you some of the constraints and opportunities with respect to slopes, slide hazards. We're all very aware, quite painfully aware now, the risk of the Cascadia, both earthquake and tsunami risk. The Baldy Creek drainage is a fundamental characteristic of the area and something that Landon knows a lot about. We have some environmental protections there, and also wetlands throughout in some portions of the city area. All right, so this map, I don't believe is in your packet, so we can sure put it up on the website. Folks, I think know that your information now is on the project website. Has anyone checked out the project study website? So I believe it's nelscottplan.org. So we'll send that out on a follow-up link. And if you want to take a closer look at this base map, that will be up there. Okay.
so if I stand here, Mike's picking up?
Yes.
So this is good. Be right here. Okay, the study area. This is a map that, with these fun swirling colors, really helps me to begin to understand and hopefully helps the general person, general citizen to be able to look at something and begin to understand the topography a little bit better. What is being indicated by these different colors? Red are the steepest slopes that are pretty difficult to build upon, or for that matter, put a road at least straight up. And sometimes on some of these more smaller areas that are a little dusty red like that, and you can go along the edge of the slope.
Can you just orient us?
Get oriented. Here's the highway. The Nelscott strip is right down to the bottom here. 30 seconds here, and 23rd is up here. So that's the road that goes all the way to dead ends back out in that kind of industrial 27th, am I reading that right? And 31st and 32nd is at the very bottom. I always like to point out Olivia Beach because that's a project that I planned many years ago and being built out. People have an idea of the sense of scale. There's the central part of Olivia Beach, if folks are familiar with that. And again, Nelscott, that whole network. So, that is actually a really interesting neighborhood. The existing old Nelscott and then the addition of Olivia Beach in there, it really works as a complete neighborhood. And in some ways, that's something of a model, perhaps, for what could eventually grow and a vision of what could happen out there. It's walkable. There's a park in the center. There's commercial. So it's a place where people can live. They can work at some of the shops down here in Nelscott Strip. They can play in the park, workshop, play, recreate, and even, get to school across the road here and get to the school further down here, and not too far away from the theater and the cinema. So there's a lot of things within walking distance. But of course, we all drive too. And that highway is a major driving route that brings people all the way up and down from California to Washington. And so there are a lot of customers that come through here also. If you're a business in the Nelscott Strip, you might think of Highway 101 as your economic generator. So as we start to look at what could happen in all of this land, we're approaching it in a similar way. How could this be planned in a manner that people could live here? They could maybe work here. Not everybody will work here. Some people will pop up the road and go work somewhere else in Lincoln City. They could live, they could work, they could shop, they could play, they could get down to the cinema and the schools that are down here, and connecting all through. Now, if all of that is happening, all of that walking around or biking or taking short drives within this whole network of properties is all done by going out to the highway, there's a hum. Maybe I'll just talk a little quieter. If all of those trips, all of those people living here and shopping and doing things all meant getting out and driving up and down the highway to get to another portion of this, it would become a real mess. I mean, just getting in and out of the highway today off of some of these side streets, because we went into every one of these little streets and driveways that we could manage to get into, really searching through the property, literally getting mud on our shoes. Every time we came out onto the highway, we had to wait and look to the left. It's really difficult right now. So it brings up the question right away of, and this is not a new question, it's been around for ever since Lincoln City started growing, is what other parallel routes to the highway could possibly be established? And we'd like to think of it just starting off with what little local streets could be established as connections, all the way down here on 32nd. We're really wondering, is there any way to connect into the southern end here? It's pretty bottled up with already existing development. But is there some way, somewhere through all of this, that there could be some kind of other way to move through these hills? They might be kind of, might have to be a little bit of snaky streets, crossing some stream corridors, going up and down hills, making your way back down, perhaps. Maybe that's a possible route somewhere there. How do you get up to there? Is 27 something that's just going to dead end? Or is there maybe a way to make your way up there? We're going to be studying this in great, great detail. Not with just the sort of blurry topo map, but big maps laid out with our scales, carefully analyzing it using computer systems as well. Through recent associates who will be working with us on this project, to really determine where can new local streets, and I say local meaning really, getting up and down, there's not going to be we don't suspect there's going to be some big major collector or arterial running through this. It's going to be sort of what we like to call capillary streets that are also safe, walkable, sort of slow-moving streets for people to, really move through neighborhoods. So we start thinking about neighborhoods again like this kind of neighborhood, the way this all knits together. And it's really, pieced together in an almost medieval kind of way. There wasn't somebody that just laid all of this out in one shot. It all happened incrementally over time. And in the end, it all fits together in a really nice, rather nice way. But, even this is not an ideal neighborhood. A lot of these streets don't have sidewalks. We did put sidewalks into all of Olivia Beach, and alleyways even, so that you can get your garages off of the street into the back of the lots. And it means that the fronts of the houses, facing onto the streets, onto the sidewalk, are all rather attractive. Because instead of having garage doors, like you see through most of the rest of Lincoln City, we've got front porches. And people literally sit on those front porches and come down off them and come into the central park. We'd like to imagine maybe there's ways of creating similar streets and blocks and alleyways and houses, perhaps up in the hills here and tucked into the valleys. So, once again, I touched upon the idea that we're going to see if we can find any way to bring at least one, if not two, maybe 3 different ways that you can come from one little neighborhood village, let's say, up here, and make your way all the way through. And we've even wondered, is it possible to even get all the way up through, I forget the name of this street, that may or may not be a feasible street connection based on the topography. We're going to have to study that very carefully. But even out here, is there any way to somehow connect up through here so that you might even be able to travel all the way through here very slowly on a bicycle, walk, or slow drive without having to always go out onto the highway? Sometimes you'll hop on the highway and you'll take it. But if there's a way to get through the neighborhoods elsewhere, otherwise, we'll see if we can make that happen. There's also an opportunity, I think the last thing I'll mention is, I'm good on time? Yeah. There's also an opportunity that we started looking into right along the edge of the highway because, recognizing that particularly this knob comes right out close to the highway. So we're going to have to look for ways to get up onto the hills in here. And that's not always going to be easy. Right along the highway, there's a charter. The charter business is somewhere in, right here, I believe it is. So charter is sitting in here, and there's a couple of buildings. There's several buildings of several businesses. There's not a lot of buildings developed over here, but we noticed that the city has been planning and implemented a little piece of it, of a sidewalk, a rather wide concrete walk that's right in front of charter there. And we were told when we got back to the office that really has been a plan that has been worked on, although very slowly, for a number of years, and charter was required when they built their building to make that sidewalk between Baldy Creek and the building. So you've got the highway, you've got a slope that goes into Baldy Creek, almost kind of a ditch there nearly, and then you have this sidewalk, and then you have the front of the building. It's an interesting idea that perhaps for long stretches along the road, you have these crossings where there are culverts and crossings over Baldy Creek of driveways and streets that has this wide sidewalk in front of the buildings. It's almost kind of like, if anyone's familiar with places in Oakland, California, I think it's in Oakland, or in Washington, D.C., or Willamette Drive in West Lynn, or a little place up the road here called Nelscott Strip. There's something similar with, it's called a boulevard frontage lane. And even fantastic, beautiful Parisian boulevards like the Champs-Elysees has a highway in the middle, basically, and it has a little slip lane out on the two sides and frontage lanes. I wish I had a picture of it. In the technical memo here, on page, I don't say page number, but there's a couple of photographs here.
8 for their copy.
And it's showing you an example of Washington, D.C., and this one's apparently in New York City, of a boulevard slip lane. You got the big highway basically right in the middle here, and then you have tree strips here and a row of trees here, and then over, in your laps here are these lanes, and then the buildings are on the sides out here. Now,
I just wanted to point out, because you're describing the technical reasons how you could do a slip lane, but please hit us with also the why.
Yeah. Why?
So for the businesses, the
What?
buildings, sorry, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you. I was trying to describe the sort of physically what it might look like. It's basically like, it's just the Nelscott strip is really good for businesses. That you can't get parking on the highway, obviously. You're not going to put on-street parking on Route 101. The slip lane allows a safe little slow-moving passage where you can have on-street parking directly in front of the shops. Now, this isn't making a big parking lot in front of the shops, like a commercial strip, shopping center. It's one thin little strip and slip lane that you can get into and out of. And it provides a little bit of parking to be able to serve those shops that are there. People can pull off. But in the same way, you can walk from Nelscott back in here from these neighborhoods, and you can walk into the Nelscott strip from the back as well. So it's an idea that could be regenerated in a couple of spots along that side of the highway. It would only work on the east side for the most part because of the slopes over here. It's an idea that we're trying to generate, see if there's some interest in this idea, and if by those property owners or those businesses, if maybe a future redevelopment of them or additional development could improve on the retail potential along that front and actually create a very beautiful way for people to walk and bike and even drive.
I think we're giving you, if I may, a few hints of some of the techniques that Lawrence might bring forward as we go into the alternative concept. So right now, I jumped quickly into the agenda, but just to pause and say this is the second out of, I think, 6 meetings. And this is kind of the information-heavy upfront piece of the studies. So I apologize for talking at you so much. We'd love to hear your comments or questions about how this would work at this break. Then I'll go through the rest of the existing conditions presentation. But from here, I believe we distributed a schedule in your last packet. Francisco, if you could just write down schedule and then the base map for things I'd like to circulate to the committee members after this meeting. So in October, just to flash forward to next steps, we'll be coming back for a little mini week. So we'll be here from Wednesday, September 30th, with our partners at the city, all the way through October 3rd, Saturday, bringing forth some concepts that weave in and propose ideas like this. So there's a mixture of, Lawrence, we've been going over a lot right now, but this idea of picking up the pattern of neighborhood development, where would those go? How do we provide a parallel route, both for evacuation and also daily use, connecting to the community college and the school campuses, providing more healthy walking and biking choices. So we'll be rolling up all these concepts into some alternative concepts for you. But just to pause right now on what Lawrence has gone over right now, are there any questions or comments, reactions to this slip lane that really isn't so foreign because you have it, it's following the pattern of what you have here in Nelscott already? Yeah. Any observations, questions about the map?
And then also the idea of generally finding ways north-south.
Yeah.
Something
That's right. Questions, please, sir.
So is the concept to have off the highway foot traffic able to be able to transverse from the top of the zone all the way through the zone on the east side of the highway? Is that the concept?
Yes. Not only walking, biking, but being able to drive somehow on a local street network.
Well, and I don't mean so much, I mean, I guess that would be connectivity for those 101 front type commercial businesses type things. For instance, somebody parks in the Ocean Lake area, they can literally walk for quite a distance going from business to business, and kind of stroll type of thing. Are you seeing that type of connectivity here or more isolated? Because obviously the topography is much more difficult along some of the areas than others to do this slip concept. Are you seeing a connectivity even between those streets where you're going to have a footpath, bike path connecting the entire route?
Yes. Yeah, that's the challenge here, is that this topography really challenges us with trying to create neighborhoods that are interconnected, but it's a challenge that we have to find our best ways to overcome.
I think it's fair to say that when we talk to property owners, and some are here with us tonight, we really appreciate that. that almost to a person, it seemed, could find value in connecting property, large swaths of property. These are large property owners in this area, but connecting the back street, back body, if you will, connections north-south, so that people could avoid the highway. So we'll be looking at that topographically from an engineering perspective, from a response time perspective. So I'll be wanting to check in with you about that.
And actually, I was a bit out of character. I wasn't really thinking about response.
Yeah.
When you talk about connecting the neighborhoods in the
Yes.
back, that goes right along.
That's right.
I was thinking more from a business perspective. If somebody pulls off in a little business center there, if they can foot traffic along that whole strip, they're likely
Yeah.
to park
That'd be ideal.
along.
Yeah.
You're speaking about
If
the
it's not, yes, exactly.
Sure.
That would connect that artery. If it's not, if they have to get back in their vehicle, it's very likely not to stop
Right.
200 feet down the road.
Would that be a positive in your mind? Would that be a good idea for committee members? And then Scotty has a comment. So we need to, we're testing
I was
things.
going to ask one
Yeah.
question. Do you see this as more of a foot bicycle path, or could this actually be a small business commercial strip also?
For cars, yes.
Yeah.
Conceivably, yes,
Where
it
you
could be for cars to be able to.
Well,
drive.
you could have maybe some shops on that so-called
That's right.
bypass. Or-
That's right.
So
Even though it's
you could walk.
100 yards from 101 or 200 yards.
That's right.
So then, yes, you could park once and walk perhaps that whole, what's that going to be, maybe about half a mile or so? I've got to get our scale
And
card.
we've done it. Our first visit out, we walked the entire length, but then even just today, we walked that, and just to see if it's feasible. So that's what we're investigating. What do other committee members think of that concept? Judy, I'm just curious, Bill, from a business perspective, what do you guys think of that concept? Barb?
I think if you could have a combination of the slip lane and sidewalks along the highway, and I think, Dawn has a good point that they're going to want to pull over one place, but they're not going to want to come back to the highway and pull off again. So you can have that continuity along there, but also, I like the idea of meandering streets, that you can come off of that and meander through the rest of that property and to
Back, yeah.
come on out, on or whatever it is that goes up that hill. Is that
14th. Or on,
31st or?
No, up north.
23rd.
Roger and all those people live up on that high.
On or.
Or,
That's or.
that is
Yeah,
a word. Okay.
We've been
And
struggling with
connect-
that. Yeah.
Connect
Yeah.
that. Connect your slip lanes.
Yeah.
Top
in
and
here?
bottom,
Yeah.
but connect this meandering street up there to.
I'm going to give her the
Or.
pointer. Yeah, I'm going to give you the
Because
pointer.
it'll also cross 23rd, so they can.
right.
So by
Okay,
23rd,
so-
and then it's our reservoir, and then you go on to 19th
Right.
Street, you can turn
Right.
there and come out at 15th, at
Just pass the pointer,
Weimar,
just don't hit have it
and then the post office.
Watch your.
Okay, well, if you can have the slip lane, along here.
Yes.
That's for your
Yes, it is.
commercial area, but if you can meander your streets
Yeah,
somehow through here, across, and connect right here with or.
yeah.
Because people, you come down 19th there, and if you've ever driven up, you can take, a left down to Weimar, but here you take a right. There's a whole residential area up here.
Back a little bit, but yes. Yeah, back a little bit. North a little bit, but yes.
Yeah.
Still doesn't connect all the way to Weimar.
We went,
But
we
but
went
if you
down
could
here.
connect to that,
You want-
then
It
it
could,
really
but
gives an
15th Street.
alternative to all kinds of
All the way up to
people.
East Devils Lake Road, all the way up and out.
Right, it would eventually go to that.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Well, we discovered though, we went down here and came down this, poked around and checked it out, then we came back up. Then we said, okay, well, will this connect? Well, there's a cul-de-sac here, but then there's a stub that goes up there.
Right.
And it stopped right there, dead end. So that's one possible connection. We have to research further whether that's possible to make it through there.
But if you could at least get it to 19th,
Yeah.
There's actually a
that keeps
development
people off of the highway on the east side.
Right, that's right. That's
There's
right. What is,
development
yeah.
taking place off of 14th Street there with the multifamily dwellings that they swing down and come down on, which would be.
Well, They're on 14th Street. But there's a connection on 19th Street that you were just talking about. You could come out on 15th, which is not developed yet.
Here?
Yeah, yeah. So it'd be right off of this section. Then you'd be onto, or be able to go to Weimar,
Right next to the farm
the
station.
post office.
Then he stumbles and goes
We
all
have a
the way
pump
around.
station that we need
Right
to
next to the pump
move.
station.
We need to move that
One
pump
time
station.
that was kind of platted as a street. I wasn't sure.
It
if that
is,
plan had been
it is a
abandoned.
street, and there really, even with the pump station, there's enough room to improve that. But we need to move that pump station near the reservoir. And so when we move that, it'll make a wider area.
So you already need to. I wouldn't think you'd move your pump station just for us for this study and the connection, because it sounds like you have to move it.
No, we have quite a few development type things that it would serve.
Okay, gotcha.
I guess my question was going to be, are you thinking about anything commercial on that secondary street over?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, very much so.
So,
That's
I mean,
yeah.
like I've been in Olivia Beach, for example, and say, hey, this is pretty nice here. Stop and get a cup of coffee, but there's no place to get a cup of coffee in Olivia Beach.
Not in Olivia, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I
Next
mean.
time.
Wouldn't that be
Yeah,
great?
next time.
Right.
Well,
I mean, you know, it's another way to use your neighborhood instead of having to
Yeah.
get in your car and drive over and get a cup of
Exactly
tea
right.
over
Yeah.
the strip or something.
Yeah.
If you could walk to that, and if we could put some plots of small business in there, it might be another opportunity for jobs in Lincoln City also.
As you acquire this, are you keeping in mind also purchasing access for parking
And keeping in mind
that,
parking.
so, yes.
Yeah, we heard that so strongly at our first meeting. So please let's, keep being skeptical until we come back to that and have an adequate strategy for that. So we were, and acquiring maybe part of it, requiring it upon redevelopment may be a part. So we plan to float these strategies with you before we close it down and approach Planning Commission and Council with the strategies. But, the right way to do this over time, I would even think of this as a 50-year plan, to be honest with you. So it says properties develop, Charter's going to be there for a while, so it's properties develop and redevelop. What does that actually look like? For us and our children's children, what's to come. But adequate parking, absolutely. Mr. Sita has offered us his property. We know that that's available. We are looking along the slip lane. The idea is actually to have parking right in there with it, so that just as with the strip, you're able to just park right at access business directly. But we know that there'd be some spots where you need to go to aggregate parking as you do in the strip. So we haven't been able to look that closely to it. What we'll probably do is come back to you with those concepts in October, and then as part of the implementation strategy, really vet some of those things, then go back and, back to drawing board. It's a very iterative process, but thank you. What else might what might we had two little sleep last night. Sorry, what else might we not be thinking about right now that you'd like to advise us about? Please, sir.
Well, you haven't,
just on this map, yeah.
well, you haven't mentioned it, but on one of the maps that we've got out,
Yes.
there's a few east-west, like, don't remember the street numbers, like
Right.
20, from 101 over to our bypass
Yep.
street. There's like 3 connections or
Yep.
4 connections.
Yep, I'll hit
I
that.
think that's a good idea to have that.
We want to try to make it a web.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, while we're talking about north-south streets, definitely going east-west, so that you get blocks.
Because we're doing the same thing where, as we did in Portland, we took people away from Willamette River, and in one respect, 101 divides the people over here from the beach.
That's right.
And it bothers me that we don't have a more integrated, what are you going to do with 101, If there's some way to integrate so it's easier to get from those east side of the streets to the beach.
That's
That's
a
right.
The sand.
Yeah.
That's a really critical idea.
Yeah.
101 is a barrier.
Yeah, it's a
to
total barrier
facade.
that we got to figure out a way to ease our way across that.
And
Now-
thank heavens for the light now. It's just,
Yeah.
we probably won't be getting too many more lights at this time soon, but looking
Yeah.
at that one signalized crossing now as sort of a gateway, then
Right.
how do you spread out from there? I'm going to keep going, pushing on to the rest of the PowerPoint. Can I flip back to the PowerPoint? I'm sorry, we worked a little bit that base map into the PowerPoint. I had a base map in there, but it wasn't the one Lawrence wanted to use. So thank you very much. So, do you want to speak to any other of these elements, Lawrence?
Yeah, I mean, the first point, there's a lot of variation in elevation here, and as we say, there's opportunities, constraints from having such a steep, hilly landscape. The steep slopes, once again, from the previous map, are going to be difficult to build on. The lowlands sometimes are wet because they're really draining off those hills. The hilltops might be the buildable areas, and yet there's also a real need to have some level of preservation of the trees at the tops of hills. There's nothing worse than scalping a hill, and
Some might disagree, but
Some might disagree.
In terms of the view shed, we're cognizant of perhaps retaining that as one of the options.
Yeah, that there might be, maybe the top of a hill has a little park, has a park that like we have in Olivia Beach, but maybe that actually preserves the trees, and maybe along the hills, the steep hillsides that are not very buildable, those are going to be places where there's ribbons of trees that are going down around the streams. So there's something, 60 feet to 350 foot elevation changes. Steep slopes, 25 to 40, are quite buildable up to 40%. So there'll be a lot of areas here that are unbuildable, and thus create a very nice potential open space network. Fingers of urban and rural coming together, I'd like to call it, stream corridors that come in. Drainages, flow, and stream crossings. Presence of wetlands, there are wetlands in various places. But there's also flood hazard zones along Baldy Creek. The tsunami is, from what we hear, is going to come someday, and it might be soon, it might be later. And so we've got mapped here very clearly where the inundation zones are, and knowing from an emergency standpoint, how do you get out of, we don't want to have cul-de-sacs that only have one way out, and it's into a flood zone. So networks of streets, trying to eliminate or not even use ever cul-de-sacs and dead-end streets, creates an opportunity for getting another way out, going to high ground. Next.
Okay, yeah, thanks, okay. Great. Anything else? Obviously you have mentioned the coast and the beach, so we know that we talked about this at our first meeting, that one of the great assets of Lincoln City is the ocean. So one of the things I admire about Lawrence's practice is sometimes he thinks in terms of what's called a transect, and he's much better than I at describing that, but thinking about the ocean to the hilltop all the way up as a unified whole, and then where the village is and that our communities fit in within that. So I know you'll bring that back in
I'll bring that
October.
back.
Thank you.
I could blather about it right now, but let's bring it
I
back.
know,
in October.
exactly. Then I'd have to get your basement back up.
Yeah.
Any other observations on the environmental considerations? You want to make sure that we haven't left anything out. Please do.
Have you taken into consideration wind?
No, thank you. Please, what should we be thinking about?
Well, sometimes we have 125-mile-an-hour winds. I don't know how it would impact the slope and the elevation,
Yes.
or exactly where the patterns are, but
Yes.
it's something to consider.
Yes, you betcha, and not creating more tunnels, would be one thing, right? You don't want to exacerbate that kind of a condition. Thank you. Okay. Anything else from an environmental perspective?
I think that one thing that is a positive wind-wise is that big hillside on the other side of the highway will keep it from being a wind tunnel like Nelscott is, where it comes up and around and right up through the strip. But I think because of that hillside and the Agnes Creek open space, all that area, I think it's going to protect this area pretty well, because the wind will have to jump up over the trees. It's not going to really affect anything until you get clear to the top of the hills on the other side, I don't think.
Well, I really appreciate
So I
that.
think it's
And
gonna-
to think about thinning though, too, not
You've
creating
got
a tree
a
hazard.
blessing there with the hill on the west side of the highway.
Yeah.
And the thinning of the Agnes Creek, all that is becoming more and more healthy, and that will help your wind.
Where does the wind predominantly come from? I seem to remember northwest. It comes from the northwest in the summer,
Northeast, northwest.
southwest in the winter, and then like a constant breeze from the northwest in the summers. I recall noticing this.
Spring.
We just look at the trees.
Yeah, no kidding, the permanent.
There's actually, I remember years ago, Casey Roloff saying, yeah, we just got to be aware of the wind. So if we face, he said, he took me on a deck to the northwest side of it. We were getting hit by the wind. And he said, walk around to the corner here of the deck. And we stood there on the south side of the deck, and we were in the sun, and the wind was being completely blocked by the corner of the house.
Well, it's interesting. We were out traipsing around today, up and down and all around, and it was very quiet in some pockets, just what you're describing, Barb. So on the east side, there's actually some pockets where I was in the middle of a gravel street and said, I might just pull out my lawn chair because it was so beautiful. There was no wisp of wind. It was just the 70-degree weather. It was incredible. I think I must have written my hand here. Okay, so let us just interrupt if you think that there's anything else from an environmental perspective we should be thinking about. So zoning designations, I think I went backwards. Sorry about that. So population, obviously we've had lots of change over the centuries here, but in the last 14 years, through the period of the recession, we were averaging, and I know you know this, but just to state, we sort of have to check in with ourselves as we look to the future. We also look to the past, that we had lower annual average change than the state as a whole. But we do seem to be back, and I just wondered from your perspectives if you feel that pickup in the economy in the last few years. Folks feel that in Lincoln City as well. On the employment side, very interesting. So you may know this about yourselves as well, but lower, household income than average, but higher education. So folks are it's probably due to the retirement economy as well. So folks retiring with higher than annual average income, education, but due to the predominance of the retail trade, arts and entertainment, recreation, your overall income is a little bit lower than the state's average, and I believe you probably are well aware of that yourself. So as we look to the economic development strategies and we look at the land supply, just noting in terms of manufacturing, healthcare, education, what you can help garner, encourage, will help provide a diversity of jobs for Lincoln City, greater Lincoln City area. I'm saying some of the things that are in your technical memo report, so do certainly jump in if you observe some things that might be right or wrong you'd like to correct or add. Anything, Pam? Yeah.
I just had a thought looking at this too, that it would be interesting because I look at the type of housing that
Yes.
maybe is limited to age cohorts, for example.
Great.
That because I like the explanation that it's the first work that produces the income, and with retirees that are increasing that population, what is that mixed difference between what percentage of the population is retirement age, what percentage is that retail worker? Are those older workers? Are those younger workers? Where is that coming from?
Thank you.
There is a report you can access on the county's website. It's the 10-year economic update, and they go into some detail about the age demographic breakdown. And I believe it's broken out by main cities as well.
Which source is that, sir?
It's called the 10-year update. It's on Lincoln County's website.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And it was put together by Anno Husing, the county planner.
Great.
And it's the most recent data we have. It's about 9 months ago that it broke.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
It'd be interesting to see if there was, a census tract that's relevant to this particular study area, and see if there's any particular uniqueness of that too in relationship to that study.
Sure. You bet. Okay. Thank you. I'm a little bit deeper. There's a couple comments, Barb, and then Scotty. Yeah.
I think that we really need to be cognizant of the need in looking through all your numbers of how many houses, how many rentals, that sort of thing.
Yes.
We really need multi-family housing.
Right.
I think.
Yes.
There is a real shortage when you read these statistics in this
That's right.
report. That's the kind of housing we need: lower income housing, affordable housing for the service workers, and when they say they have to go out of town to live. I think that needs to be planned, not all Olivia Beach kind of housing.
Yeah.
We love it. But
We need
Different.
some multi-family, and quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need quite a bit of it. I know people that have tried to find an apartment in this town,
That's right.
and it's impossible.
That's right.
Once they find an apartment, they stay there, and, you don't have the transient behavior in the apartments here that you would have like in Portland
That's
or
right.
Salem or
That's
someplace. They don't move around because once they find that place,
But
I think you're completely leased out. I mean, the statistics were stunning, yeah, in terms of your supply.
Yes.
So
And it's
when we talked to property
really
owners,
has to be
they were
addressed.
somewhat leaning towards some workforce housing is going to become a little bit overused. I feel like it's, but we need a range of housing for all people, and in particular, starter homes for young couples that just can't afford. We learned in talking to our stakeholders that diversity of housing type and how we do multifamily. One of the reasons I'm so pleased to be working with Lawrence is it doesn't have to be unattractive. So we want to make sure that there's quality, attractive housing choices for all income levels. So Scotty had a comment, and then in the back.
I would just comment, I spent some time at Mealside and Meals on Wheels, and we probably had 4 or 5 that I could name out of 30-some people that have moved to Lincoln City or have tried to move to Lincoln City because it's too expensive for them to live in the valley. I'm talking about people on more limited incomes than I have, and they're priced out of other markets, and we've always liked the beach, so they come here and look, and they really have a hard time finding places to stay.
So this data resonates with you. I mean, the median price you saw in the data, $200,000. Most families are cost burdened in terms of paying an overly proportionate share.
The low cost housing, the best comparison I have is on Jetty's 4th and Jetty. That's very popular, and this is subsidized housing.
That's right. You were all leased out in June of 2015.
Yeah,
so there's no units available.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sir, please.
There are generally waiting lists on
That's right.
with the rental agencies that manage individual homes in this city, and I've helped people look for housing here.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a waiting list on a nice piece of property. 23 people stacked up on it, so
That's right.
affordable housing in this town is really in short supply, and there's a lot of acreage there in this Nelscott area that we're looking at. That affordable housing could be put in there, including some apartments and affordable houses, individual residences, for those who can afford that. But with our workforce here, as your statistic on family income indicated just now, is really not very well qualified to buy a home for a couple $100,000 or more, and I'm in the real estate business, and that is really a tall order to fill.
That's right. No, we learned that from you in one of our first meetings, so thank you. I mean, we've really been listening to that. Sir, please. Oh, sorry, Paul, and then Dave, if you don't mind. You've been waiting, yeah.
Just touching, I think echoing what you were just kind of alluding to is like a mixed income environment. So you have not just low income pockets, but really to keep the community vibrant, I think we really need to have the full scale, of housing available within very close neighborhoods. I mean, within each neighborhood, such that we're not isolating groups.
There are several apartment complexes in this town that did have some federal help in being built, and they generally are fully occupied, probably with waiting lists. But and so that's part of the mix there. We need more of that kind of affordable housing, but also individual homes that can be built on land that is not oceanfront.
You bet. I'm going to keep pressing on Dave. Yeah.
Well, I guess I would just echo that and leave it with the conversation I had with Maya Lease, the principal of TAP 712, just a couple days ago. We were talking about the 40-odd teachers that we're going to welcome at this Welcome to Lincoln City event on September 1st. And she said, it is a godsend that we have this new apartment complex that just went up next to Weimar because so many teachers are living there. So it's not just your typical tourism workforce that needs the federally subsidized apartments, but there's a broad range of apartment need.
I got here 2 years ago, and it was a challenge. I completely lucked out with where I ended up finding to live, but especially with being so last minute. But it truly is a challenge and for any, especially for a teacher who's never taught before and they're moving here, and if they want to rent something, it's like $1,200, and that's
right. That's
unattainable.
Sure, and there's a spectrum in multifamily housing, and I think that we tick a lot of boxes along with it, and so I think there's tremendous opportunity. There's tremendous business opportunity.
Sounds like
We should all go in on some apartment complexes.
I'd like to ask some questions
Just
about.
quickly, yeah, because remember, this meeting concludes at 6, so we do need to keep going, and we
Folks
still need to
want
get to invite.
stay around a little
individuals.
longer
Yeah.
than 6,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yeah, Lawrence, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's the types of different kinds of housing that I want to tease out of you all a little bit. I want to ask about, you're talking about apartments, and that's all I've heard. What about
No, they said
townhouses?
multifamily.
Well, multifamily means usually apartments. What about townhouses? What about duplexes? What about, so to your point about mixed income, is that, my proposal is that it not be one-size-fits-all complexes of apartments, but that it's a mix of different things, all on the same street, from duplexes,
I think that's
townhouses.
absolutely favorable.
Yeah.
And the other component that I think we lack is summer housing. Not for just a nightly rental, but for people that maybe come here to work in the summer population to serve the existing need of additional service workers, or say for the Devils Lake Water Improvement District, an intern we get in the summer. They can't find housing in the summer because they're all, VRD rentals, and the market doesn't sustain it.
And at the end of the day, where people go is they go to where I live. They go to Otis and Rose Lodge, where they can afford housing and larger lots and all of that. And what does that do? We still drive on Lincoln County roads. We pay property tax to the county, but we don't contribute to the property tax in Lincoln City. And so I think that we're missing an opportunity by not providing those people a place to come.
Good.
Within the limits.
Thank you, Bill.
What Dave said is 100% accurate. The people that I spend time with in their 20s and 30s are, if they plan on staying here, whenever we talk about housing, which is all the time, they plan on buying out of Lincoln City or looking out of Lincoln City. They don't even bother looking here.
But
Yeah.
you're speaking mostly of price.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we got that point. I'm just going to say, we're hearing you on that. It sounds like the most strongest need, really, in this study area is a variety of income prices. And whereas the Livingston saying, I'm so happy to be working with Lawrence on this, is that I wouldn't think you would have proposed just a product of, apartment buildings. And so, we'd love to come back with you, a range of different types. I mean, Deborah was telling me about a fourplex you designed up at, for Rhodes End, and with, parking in the back. So very attractive treatment. So please trust that we'll come back with you with some design types, actually at our next meeting that will be during Design Week, so September 30th. We look forward to coming back to you with some just options and see what resonates with Lincoln City. Please, sir.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
you threw some suggestions out there on townhouses and those types of styles, and I think they definitely have. Those could be alternatives, because it gets you some higher density housing without going to an apartment style, and it still allows for individual ownership. I think the challenge is how do you keep it out of the VRD market to where these are not, and I don't know if they're this personal, I'm in Olympia Beach.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful homes, certainly nowhere close to affordable housing for the community. So,
Thank you. Yeah, good. I'm going to keep pressing on it, but if you don't make it, one of the things I promise for you is that when you book a meeting, when you agree to a meeting until 6, so we get you out and home and onto your next of your events for the evening, including dinner, being with your families. So development constraints. In your memo, we mentioned development opportunities as well. So obviously, I'll just state the obvious: location along 101. Your the beachfront access, the number of artists in your community, so essential for your economy, and then of course the natural features. The constraints you mentioned, heavy influence on your economic base, being tourism, the seasonal fluctuations we were just speaking to, so what does that do to housing demands? The availability of workforce housing, we've just been hitting that very hard, and the need for a full range of affordable housing types for our working members of our communities at all levels. There's some competition. You saw in the memo, my colleague Bonnie G. Yosef was down with us doing the stakeholder interviews, and she wrote this piece on the development assessment, and so she was speaking to that, there's competition, but that your own business and you serve Lincoln City, so your neighboring communities as well. And then the vulnerability and emergencies, we talked about that last time, just please know we keep that in the forefront of our minds. So, again, that one of the reasons for the parallel routes is to provide for reconstruction if we do have a mega event. So we don't be many months coming, so the more redundancy we can provide, the better. I'll just keep going quickly because I have a selfish interest here because I want to see if we're on the right track in our vision and goals because it's fundamental to how we frame up the alternatives when we come back to you next time. I think, let's see, here's some more opportunities. I just mentioned some of these, but some others that are mentioned in the memo, the mix of housing. So Bonnie was writing about this, and you're all concurring, validating what she's saying, but there's an opportunity for a mix of housing types and ranges, different price points, and then additional retail even, which I was actually surprised to see that your lease rates on your commercial space are as high as they are. So very high, so you're validating that. So it was a little bit of a surprise to me, but it seems like you're almost all leased up in commercial as well. So there is a need for the coffee shop and the other types of neighborhood commercial on the east side of the highway as we look at building that wouldn't be contributing to an existing oversupply. So does that all sound right? Okay. Great. Just hitting on the transit line.
I would make one comment.
Please, stop me, because I'll just keep going.
We do have our nodes, which, when you look at the gap, which is this part, is kind of like, through the planning efforts, been intentionally to stay a string and not become its own node. So to go too much wider with that with a commercial component may disserve some of those other Ocean Lake, Taft, Nelscott, as being those kind of more commercial zones.
Right.
So I think that's something to consider.
Good. Okay. Well, that would be perfect. In our alternatives for you, perhaps we could look at some different placement of commercial and just get community feedback on too much, too little competition. So we really want your guidance there. So we're looking at ways to pull apart the alternatives so that they're disparate enough so that you can actually give us some response in which then to come back with at the end of community design week. So we'll be working like crazy those 3 days. So but on September 30th, we meet with you next, and then by October 3rd, that Saturday, we'll have gone from a range of alternatives in the first public meeting that night, meeting with you in the afternoon, and the first public meeting that night, going from a range of alternatives to a selected alternative, a preferred alternative on October 3rd. So please reserve some good time for us that week because we'll need to move quickly through those items. And Deborah has encouraged us to do that. She said keep the momentum up. So the pressure's on. We have a lot to do that week. The existing transit lines, you know them. What do they call it again? Oh, no, okay. So the existing transit lines, you know them. We just need to state the obvious. People mentioned last time a lot about looking at the connections, whether it's from bus to bike to walking or car to bus to walking, and of course parking. So being mindful of the resource that exists and possible expansion in the future. That concludes our slides on the existing conditions and future conditions. Is that right? I feel like I missed this point you were making, sir, about the roads. So just obviously taking an inventory of the existing roads. You saw this summary of the different roads. There's a lot of work going on in your transportation system plan. So you have different, highway intersections, the different cross sections, which are collectors, which are local streets. So looking to use those as existing infrastructure. And Patrick, you're probably the closest we have today to ODOT, because I don't believe your ODOT colleagues are in the room. That it's not out of the question to look for a new access onto 101, but that would probably be a route for us of at least last resort to create more access right onto 101. So we'd like to aggregate the access and the traffic flows onto existing entrances. Lila, do you have an opinion about that strategy?
I think that's definitely what ODOT's always looking for.
Yeah. We won't probably be proposing new signals in there. Any other comments on, I know this was fast, on the transportation network or transit, existing or future plans, please?
Is this graph going to remain part of this plan? Because I think that it needs to be revised.
There's some errors in it.
Yeah.
Big ones.
And, it needs to be brought up to date because everything that you are saying is going to be built in the future is already in place.
Yeah. Like the alignment of 32nd.
Yeah. And the speed zones are a little bit off.
Okay.
And the lanes. And,
Great.
I think it needs to be brought up to what
Great.
is real right now. And so you've got, for instance, you've got 2 lanes through there. It's actually 3 lanes now. 35 mile an hour goes clear down to 29th. It doesn't stop at 23rd.
Great, so Barbara, I'm just going to...
Just things like that, I'm just trusting you're going to bring that all up to date.
I appreciate you
before
pointing
it's-
that out, actually, because we didn't get that in the tech memo responses from the city, but I don't think, Lila, you had a chance to look at the tech memo. So can you give us some updates on those?
I just want to make sure that
thank
if it's
you.
a final thing.
No, this is draft.
It's
We've already
real,
draft, yeah.
that it's real and this.
Yes, you betcha. Yeah.
Several
They're
revisions.
updated in our transportation system.
Yeah,
That we just completed, so.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this was the previous, like in a draft piece of your TSP, so I'll be sure to get the most recent.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Things are moving fast. It's hard to keep up. Roads are being built. Intersections are being completed. I just can't wait for those lights to go on 32nd, but I'm not sure when they will go on, do you know?
Probably October.
Yeah. Kent, you had a comment. If it can be quick,
I
please
do
go
have
ahead.
a very top line,
Yeah.
a real important part is the sidewalks. From 19th to 23rd, that's a death zone on the east side of the highway. They have a nice sidewalk going up in front of the gravel pit, and then you go into
Yeah,
getting
that's right.
filled.
That's right.
And so I don't know why you wouldn't have that on the,
On the improve, this isn't improved, this is existing, but so we'll look at that. I'm not sure if that's an improvement in
you
your
know, the city
TSP.
council, I don't know who's
Yeah.
going to pick that up, but
That's probably in your TSP. Lila's given it.
And that's what we've been talking about, the backup all the improvement.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
Okay, great. That Lauren's just talking to you about. Okay, thank you, sir. Great. Alrighty. So if you see anything else, we'll make these changes. We'll get this corrected. Thank you. And the other advice you've been giving us on existing and future conditions, we'll be taking that forward into the alternatives we'll be developing for Community Design Week. Okay. Sorry to rush you along. It might be a very quiet drive back to Portland because Lawrence won't be talking to me because I've cut him off so much.
I just had to get that one. That's all.
So this is the vision statement that we created based on our meeting last time. So it's actually in pieces on the screen, but it's also in your handouts. This is the PowerPoint that we've just been going over. So you can look at this, or you can look at Tech Memo 1, or you can just look at the screen. So in 2045. So again, putting ourselves 30 years in the future, consistent with some of your long-range plans, Nelscott is developing both east and west of the highway in a neighborhood that is well-connected, economically vibrant, and attractive. So this vision and goal statement, we would like to go over with you tonight, but also it's part of what will be going to the public that first night in September 30th. So it won't be final until after we meet with the public. But see if you think we're on track enough to take this out to the public. It's also in your tech memo number 1. I, of course, and I used to draw that red line around the map, my colleague, and just to mean that we are trying to unify both sides. We're taking your advice that we might not just want to replicate the commercial load in that case, but trying to knit both sides of the highway together. Just going to keep going. It's a welcoming tourist environment and a pleasant home for year-round residents, so both tourism and long-term residents. Development honors the natural assets of the area and builds off them to create value for property owners and tenants. One of the things I know Lawrence, from working with him, always does is try to create value for everyone in the community. So the green in Olivia Beach is one example that everyone benefits from public space, proximate, or I've seen him do it with respect to views and also transportation corridors and access. So trying to maximize value for everybody as well as on an individual basis. So stop me if there's anything. I'll stop as I get all the way through the vision statement, but just keep going. So residents enjoy opportunities for lifelong learning at the Oregon Coast Community College and Lincoln City Public Schools. And students are able to walk, bike, and take transit or drive safely to the campus. This is Campi? I'm not sure what that's a little awkward there. Maybe just a campus? Yeah. So that's the conclusion of the vision statement. Are we on track enough to take that out to the public, or are there any changes or corrections you'd like us to make, or is anything missing? Or guide our work here.
I missed the first meeting, and but in might read our master plan for parks and recs that we've encouraged small neighborhood parks. It's one of our goals for the last 20 years. And you addressed that exactly. So, but just to give that some emphasis, I'd like to mention that.
That small is
where families, where people can walk out and sit down on a bench and get to know their neighbors. That's what we're lacking in this town: is small neighborhoods, parks.
So decentralized.
And if we go for an industrial park, of course, it's just as important an industrial park too, to have a place where workers can get some fresh air.
A concept. Thank you very much. That's a great concept.
I don't think it's a bad idea to take into consideration at dog parks.
Yeah. Always a good controversy. I'm going to say that. That's
I know.
But we can run with it.
We will have probably one in town, but only one in the entire town.
Right.
And it's not even built yet, so, yeah.
And you wouldn't consider the beach one big long.
Unfortunately, people use it that way and don't take it with them.
That's right. That's right. All right. So thank you, Mel. But maybe we'll be mindful of really talking to dog parks as well. In the plan, we can look for that as well.
Because that doesn't need to be necessarily.
Right. Thank
Run up
you.
and down hills and wear themselves up.
That's right. That's right. It doesn't. Thanks. Yeah, good point, Barb. Thanks. Sir, please.
Just a very minor point. It said Lincoln City Schools, sometimes agencies are pretty protective of their identity, and
Right.
it's technically Lincoln County Schools.
Thank you.
I don't know.
I was trying to. I'm good with Lincoln. Yeah,
Refer to sometimes Lincoln City Fire Department.
Yeah.
We love Lincoln City, but we really don't.
Yeah, no, it should be Lincoln County. Thank you. Okay.
Like a proper identity.
Great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, county schools. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Correction on the vision statement before we run it out and test it with the public. So, okay, so good enough to go. Okay. So then on the guide, so implementing that, you've all, many of you have been through these planning processes before, so it's not uncommon. Can I get this blinker down as forward? That shouldn't be so hard. So livability and housing. So these are now goals to implement the vision. And we heard from you this very, very strong point that people of all ages be able to find attractive, affordable housing in comfortable mixed-use communities in a beautiful natural setting. So we really went for it there with the vision from what we heard from you and the stakeholders in the first meeting, proximate both to the forest and the sea. So there's this incredible opportunity here, along with this fabulous transect within a walkable area to access both ecologies, which is very unique in Oregon. So. Communities are walkable, interesting, well-planned, and maintained. So you work cut out for you, at least on the plan side. On recreation and health, I know I should be standing over here, so I'm going to do it. Residents live within walking distance to parks, trails, and recreation that enhance quality of life for all ages and contribute to a healthy lifestyle. Arts and recreational programs provide a range of options for visitors and residents. So just looking to build that into the alternatives for, the Nelscott Cap area. So these are what Lawrence will use to help kind of flesh out the concepts he presented to already tonight. So, sorry for all the words, I'm going to read it for those who may be listening at home. Heritage and economy. We want to recognize, of course, the first people of this area, the select tribal communities, European colonial heritage, and early settlement patterns. So we recognize and value parts of the Nelscott community culture. Residents from all backgrounds being welcome. Employment opportunities in Nelscott represent a diversified economy and provide jobs for area residents. Residents enjoy working from home in the cities and in the city's nearby industries. The tourism economy continues to sustain a local economic vitality, of which the natural environment is a prime asset. So that's a lot of words. Any comments or correction on this one? Reactions are fine. My feelings will not be hurt. We need your direction to make it good for Nelscott. Anything, a clunker in there, or is it okay? Is it a typo I noticed? Okay. We know, too, that we've been Francisco's been helping, and we're very grateful. 17% of Lincoln City's community is Latino, identifies as Hispanic in the census, so we've been doing trying to do some some outreach. And so if anyone knows, I'm wondering, Kelly, for example, if there's anyone in the schools we can talk to, if there's any specialized PTA or groups that are working with students or Latino students throughout the city, we'd love your tips. Francisco has been researching that, but we've also would love your ideas. On Community Design Week, we probably will be hosting a Spanish language community forum on that concluding day on October 3rd at La Roca on Nelscott Strip. We met with the owner this morning, and so we'll probably be having a Spanish language forum that's family friendly that morning. So other suggestions we very much would appreciate. Please start this time.
I feel like I'm doing all the talking.
Please talk, we need you.
Hey, my friend here, I think we need some chunks of ground for jobs. This used to all be zoned or kind of considered one of our industrial parks.
That's right.
And I think that we haven't listed, but there's a lot of acres there. And I think we need some space for manufacturing or assembly or something if we're putting names on the land that's this keeps some for industrial.
No doubt about it.
Do you happen to know how many acres of land in Lincoln City are zoned industrial at this time?
No, I don't.
About 3 acres, I think.
Yeah,
I
very
thought
short.
it was pretty low.
Yeah, very short supply. Yeah.
So we're coming.
And that includes one little piece over by the outlet mall of all places.
Yeah.
Not an industrial area at all.
No.
Folks, being 10 to 6, I apologize, but I'm just going to keep us going. So that is well noted, and we are acutely aware of the shortage of industrial and employment land. What I showed you on the map, those numbers are not annexed to the city currently. So the city, as part of its comprehensive plan update, would be looking at an overall economic opportunities analysis and honing in the strategy on manufacturing. Allison, aren't you doing a gap analysis? Would you care to give us an update on that? Just a brief, for instance?
Yeah, it's just an analysis of businesses in Lincoln City and then where there are gaps based on a couple of different information sources. So
Great.
Probably available in the next month.
Perfect timing. Yeah, that's great. Just so you can do it before September 30th. Not that you were this consulting.
that will
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'm just going to ask you to hold that, maybe talk to me after so I can keep running through here. Transportation choice, residents and visitors walk, bike, and drive. This is very strong at our first meeting, you might recall. Residents and visitors walk, bike, drive, and ride transit through Nelscott and Patacha and other Lincoln City neighborhoods. Safe transportation routes connect the neighborhoods physically, economically, and socially. And I have to assure you that we understand, Judy, that there has to be somewhere for people to park because they're just not moving through. So an implementing action item here would be adequate parking. So just make a note of that. Anything else on transportation choice? I need you to stop me and interrupt if we're off track. Lifelong learning. So we're really struck with the educational opportunities in this study area. So Mid-Coast residents travel to Nelscott to take advantage of the educational opportunities at the Oregon Coast Community College campus. The OCCC, elementary and high school students and activities are central to the neighborhood's identity and community life. So just being intentional, try and knit that through both in terms of connectivity, physical connectivity, it's probably as much as we can do in this plan. We know that there's a tremendous amount of programming that goes on that needs to get the community, but that's more to the bodies, the school district, the college. On that one? So I think that's it. So ecology and natural resources. Nelscott residents and visitors appreciate the sensitivity of development in the Nelscott area that optimizes property values by mitigating hazards, protecting streams, wetlands, and forest canopy, and connecting to the Pacific Ocean with views, paths, and corridors. So anything missing in all those goals, committee members? What haven't we? Or do we do okay for now? Just know, please, if I can hear from committee members first, if you don't mind. Anyone? On track? We're okay? All right, please, yes, sir, please.
I think you could put something in there about there's already a significant industrial presence on Southeast 23rd Street.
That's right.
And when the city annexes this area that we're talking about, which would be essential for any development to take place in there, and I think some zoning of industrial along 23rd, where it already pretty much exists, would be very appropriate.
You bet, yes. Okay, so one of the implementing strategies of this plan are what zone changes are needed to be made, and so we will be mindful of that, as well as being respectful that the EOA is yet to follow the economic opportunities analysis. So please stay tuned for that process as well. There's nothing okay, there's probably a few more fun things, but I find it very intriguing to look at a community's economic aspirations and look at, see if what the, both the zoning and the institutional supports are that can make that vision a reality. So citywide EOA is coming your way, hosted by Deb. Deb and staff. She's got a busy schedule. Please, Barb. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if there should be something in this that restricts zoning that allows VRDs, because we've already talked about the fact that it really affects the values and the rents and the uses of the properties, and I think we really owe it to the city to concentrate on affordable, multi-family, and, affordable housing. And,
on this side.
And I think that, if there can be some kind of restriction on that. I know that, I don't know how it's going to work out for the rest of the town, but this is an opportunity to look forward, and I think that that's something that would really be respected if we were to put that in there.
Yeah.
But,
well, let's ask that in the public forum. I mean, I'm curious about your colleagues at the table, how they feel about that, but it's certainly something we can pull on.
There's mixed reaction to that.
I'm seeing a lot of head nods, though. Is there any concern with, I don't know, by overlay, can we? I mean, could you? Is that legal? Just kind of curious about it.
Well, yes, and we've been working on VRD issues for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I think addressing this particular area, certainly, even in CCNRs, you can establish a rule about vacation rentals, and it really has nothing to do with city ordinances, but the neighborhoods themselves can determine that.
So more on that subject, so Barb, you're acknowledging kind of it's a big issue and potentially controversial one, but to focus on this side of the highway on permanent residence affordable housing for, it's in VRD is vacation rental dwelling in the city. I wanted to just ask, Barb, did you have anything, Pam? Sorry, did you have anything to offer? Yeah.
I just had a comment on livability and housing. And I'm thinking in terms of listening to what you're saying about a lot of people don't move around from the rentals they stay in, and that made me think about the age-in-place concept, so that we build in accessibility to development. And I thought under livability and housing, maybe just adding physically accessible.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Good point.
Yeah. Good. Well, folks, if you have any other thoughts on that, please email either Kate or Deborah, and they'll get that to me. It's not that I don't want to take your comments directly. I'm happy to, but I also don't want to drop the ball. So I know that if they go to the city, we're sure to inviting them in the same place. Please.
Don't we also have an option on our website
to make comments?
To make comments.
Absolutely. So if you go to nelscottplan.org, there's an opportunity to sign in on the email list as well as make comment directly there, and we'll be putting up a survey associated with the first public meeting. So on that schedule, please take out your pens. So the September 30th from 4:30 to 6 is our next Project Advisory Committee meeting. That's a Wednesday. It's the first day we'll be in town for Community Design Week. So our first stop, we'll go hone in with staff and then come to you first to see if we're on track with some of those design concepts as well as the alternative concepts. The public that night is one step behind. They'll be weighing in on the alternatives and some of the vision and guiding principles because they haven't seen those yet. And then October 3rd, on that Saturday, we'll have a concluding presentation. So we've slated that right now for the morning. It doesn't particularly have to be 10 to noon. What do folks feel about a morning meeting, public meeting for that? Ta-da! Is that okay? Yeah? Okay, great. So those are the basic pinnings, and the rest of the time we'll have open studio. So folks and property owners will be able to drop in and talk to us. We'll be circulating a more specific schedule. Hopefully we can be on the strip itself. I have a great fantasy about being in the lease space. So I'll talk to the property owner who has some lease area there that's vacant right now. So if we could be right either inside one of the buildings right on the Nelscott Strip or at least in the public plaza. We've been dreaming if you all could work on the weather and just make sure it isn't raining sideways, we might put up some tarps and be right there on the courtyard in the Nelscott Strip. So I want to make it as easy as possible for people to engage that week.
How late again?
September 30th.
30th.
Yep, is the is your next PAC
Yeah.
meeting here, and then October 3rd is that Saturday morning. Reveal, and that's what we'll be getting folks' input on, which is their favorite option. And then from there, we'll be going forth to the implementation strategy. So it moves right along from there. Counselor, are we on the right track? Anything to add?
I'd just like to thank you all for your energy and for your help and for your guidance. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. And Cantor, sir, did you have anything you wanted to say to the group?
I don't want to sound cold-hearted, but all of this is really kind of awful. I mean, what we have is Lincoln City is in the demographic of a dying town. We have no increasing in jobs. The city council has fought any kind of living wage coming to town. So all you have vacation rental dwelling workers, they want to kill that. And then when you want to really kill a town, put in a lot of multi-family dwellings where they have a lot of kids pay no taxes and overwhelm the school, overwhelm the water system. What you need is commercial that's run from 8 to 5 that doesn't use water, pays a good tax. They don't have any kids in the school system. Olivia Beach is perfect. They've got all that development, all that tax increase, and no kids in the school system. There's no drawdown. But if you put all this affordable housing in here, you're just going to kill the whole school system, bankrupt the town and the county, and no jobs to come in. It's nice to talk about it. It sounds real heartfelt, but it's not very good in business. Having had apartments by the factory outlet for 12 years, having had multi-rentals in this town, and dealt with this situation, I think it sounds good, but you better get practical and get every kind of thing you can develop. The Romans had a theory. They designed it for 10,000 people. It was work where you live, complete communities, and then they moved on and built another one. So if all you want to put is substandard housing and no jobs, what are you going to do about that? So I think you need, and like for example, our property, a bank wanted to come in, not allowed because, it was a drive-through. Well, KeyBank couldn't come to town. Albertson was interested in coming in. No, that doesn't qualify. So everything is there. So I'm done with my speech, but I think you better think about this. Low housing sounds great, but it doesn't work.
Well, I appreciate that, looking at the finance. So we'll make sure to stay away from substandard housing. So I think we can agree we won't.
Well, it ends up that way.
We'll be planning that, and then we absolutely want jobs. So we've been speaking to the appointment. So thank you. Sir, did you have anything else you wanted to add to us in the front row? I apologize. I can't remember. Okay, all right.
I think one thing that Ken mentioned was water, and we do have a water concern, especially in a dry summer like this, and so, that may be something to...
Sure, water supply, adequate water
supply.
Okay,
right.
great.
We tend to get short in the summers when everybody's here and using water, so...
Great, thank you.
Are you thinking of like retention? Or
I don't have an answer. I'm just thinking
Flagging the
that
issue.
some of those industries that use a lot of water might not be appropriate here.
you're thinking of the industrial?
Yeah. All right, so just keeping on water supply. Well, as the counselor said, thank you very, very much. I'm sorry to rush. We might consider a 2-hour meeting next time, so I'm not rushing you. But thank you for coming. Please take a cookie, and we'll see you on September 30th. All right, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Do you guys see these? Perfect.
See you next time.
Yeah, I'll come with them.
Okay, great. Thanks.
We have an instructional assistant, Hispanic, who has